It's a great pleasure to be hosting an inaugural Artist Fellows presentation today. Before anything, there's been a lot of preparation for this day, so I want to start with what we'll do many times today, I'm sure, which is a big round of applause for all of the artists that have been involved in making today possible. As I'm sure many of you, if hopefully not all of you know, the Aspen Art Museum was actually founded by a group of renegade artists who really saw the potential and the need for a place to convene and come together to share the importance of the artist's role in our world. And so we're really built by artists, and it makes perfect sense that we would be able to share an artist from our community here today. So we're grateful to the Question Education Fund for making this program free, as well as to the Laffey McHugh Foundation for this year's support. And I'm also deeply grateful to my colleague, Teresa Booth Brown, who is our artist program coordinator, who has really been the person that's made this possible. It's really thanks to Teresa that we've kind of built up this initiative and our kind of multi-tiered initiatives for artists. So if you haven't met Teresa, I'm going to introduce her now to tell us more about the fellowship. Please stick around and get to know her. And please join me in welcoming her to the stage. Teresa.
Next up, it is my great pleasure to introduce Wewer Keohane.
This fellowship, I almost didn't put my name in the hat. And several people said, well, why not? And I said, well, I just won't get chosen. I mean, I just don't think they would choose me. And they were like, why not? And I couldn't really tell them why not. I just didn't feel like I'd get chosen. So when I did, and Teresa called me, I had to sit down. I was just so taken to be involved in this 9 months that have really changed the way I see myself. Because the honor of being named a fellow at the Aspen Art Museum with the level of fellows that I've joined has given me an ability to see myself a little more like other people see me. Not as this old woman who still thinks she's 36 and is, just sort of having fun making art, It really has changed me in the sense of my inner confidence and sense of self, and I'm forever grateful for that. Thank you. That's okay, I will in a second. I need this later. This is my artist statement. The name of my presentation is Embracing Mystery, and there's a little handout for you to take home on the back table that has that stamped on it. My art is an outward expression of an inner journey, a quest to make the invisible visible. That's my artist statement, and I thought, well, how can I show you what that kind of means to me? It seems a little esoteric. So if you would close your eyes and put your hands together and rub them very, very vigorously till you feel the heat, and then slowly pull them apart. You feel that invisible energy there? That's what I try to capture in my work. So that's about as close as I can get to describing that. I work from my dreams as inspiration, the dreams I have at night. And this is one of my little dream journals, and this is how big this is. It's little. But instead of transcribing the dream, I usually collage it or paint it or draw it. And it gives me a different way of working with the dream than doing it psychologically, which I also do, or spiritually. This dream I called a fallen star. And when I did this first collage of it, And I had done it right before the fellowship started. In the dream, I come over and I lift up the star and I throw it back up into the sky where it belongs. And I kind of got the sense of what that was about for me, but I was so fascinated by this star. In the dream, it was so radiant that I wanted to, in the fellowship, change the way that dreams influenced my work. Instead of doing the collages that sort of tell the story of the dream, I wanted to exhaust working on the dream until the symbol that means the most to me becomes the piece of art. So that's sort of what propelled me through my project, which I'll share with you along with a couple other things. When Teresa asked us to come for the first meeting, she wanted us to tell sort of our story of, you know, why we were artists, what were we doing or whatever. And I thought, oh my gosh, I've had a long life to tell in 20 minutes, and what am I going to do? And I was sharing with my wonderful husband, Steve, this, and he helped me graphically do the pie of life. So I divided my life up into 9-year sections, and then I just started filling them up with all the things I could think of that I did. And in the first half of my life, until almost 40, I realized that there were a couple threads. There was a thread of loss and recovery, and there was a spiritual thread, and there was a kind of a foundation of who I really became. I feel like I had a huge shift in my life after I turned 40, in actually being who I really am based on all those experiences. So this will weave into this in a minute. And in the little handout that I have, you have a little pie of life to do this exercise yourself. If we had decided to do classes instead of a presentation, that's probably what I would have done. So that kind of got me started on thinking. Now, I went back to this dream after our first meeting, and I did another collage of it that got a little bit closer to the radiance of the star. And then what happened was stars started appearing everywhere. And I was reading a magazine, and it was how to make a star. And I said to Steve, don't we have an old styrofoam ball? And he said, yeah. And so he found the styrofoam ball, and I had all these sticks that I have a collection of just junk in the studio. So I made this star, and along the way, I'll talk about that in a minute, about some of the reading. I started going around the house and collecting all the star things, and then my husband Steve made me, you can't probably see this, but it's a beautiful star to wear throughout the whole fellowship to sort of keep me on point, right? And then for my birthday, he made me earrings that are really cool. The star, the shooting star, and the moon. Oh, this collage felt to me the closest to the energy of the dream. There's just something about it that feels like it felt to lift that star into the sky. This was the closest to that. I made myself a star mobile to put over where I work, just to, again, shower me with this theme that I was working with. And I'm a voracious reader. So these are all the books that I read, just the art books or so, that I read during the fellowship. And in You Are the Universe, Deepak Chopra and Menas Kapatos really talked a lot about the fact that we are all from the same stardust. So that brought an even deeper meaning to my dream, and it all started to influence the work. Well, I decided that I was going to do a book for my project. And either the Pie of Life or these two other bodies of work that I had done The one on the left is a body of work that's about non-duality and the power of sacred marriage that we talk about in dream work. And the one on the right was a conceptual body of work about the gravity of the moon. And it was a year-long process of seeing each day how the gravity of the moon changed paint that was in the same viscosity. And I think between the Pie of Life project or idea and these two bodies of work, I decided to make a round book. So I started playing with wood, and still again, that was sort of a nursery rhyme, like Shannon, of the dream. And then I have all this handmade round paper, and I started drawing on it and doing collages, and it wasn't working. And the winter came, and I got out this big blue velvet duvet that I had made from the velvet that I had bought to cover the sofa, but the upholsterer wouldn't work with the velvet because it was too hard to work with. And it looked like the night sky. And at the same time that I found the velvet, I found all these old embroidery hoops that I didn't know I had. And I immediately saw that the round book would have a cover of the star. This is partially sewn here in the embroidery hoops. And then I started having major doubts. I was like, oh my God, I'm a woman artist and I'm sewing on velvet. This is like, I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm a serious artist. I mean, I'm going to be a throwback. They're going to laugh at me, all that stuff. So I had to gather myself and give myself a little lecture. And this is my philosophy of life right here. And I have to bring it up when moments like that come. And that is, this is what I try to live by in my life, but it is especially helpful in the studio. To make no comparisons, to make no judgments, and to let go of the need to control the results. And this quote by Krishnamurti, you can probably not see, it's, the ability to observe without evaluation is the highest form of intelligence. And after, repeating this as a mantra for a few days, I decided I loved my cover of my book, and I was gonna go forward and see what happened. While studying astrology and, astronomy, I came across my own constellation, and I decided that would be a perfect back of the book. So I laid it out with rhinestones. And in 1979, I bought a jacket in Japan, really cool jacket that I finally couldn't wear anymore, but it had these cool latches on it. And I was just determined that this was going to be the closure of the book. I was kind of attached to that result. I ended up sewing the stars in the constellation on the back cover. I did use the clasp. That's showing all the pieces of the book had to be clamped together in order to drill holes so that I could bind the book. And I ended up realizing that the handmade paper was not going to work. It just didn't work. I didn't like what happened with paint on it. It was too inconsistent. I didn't want to do my original ideas of taking all these symbols from each of the slices of pie and, sewing them in. It just felt like too much. So I let that go, and I started working with round birch wood as the pages of the book. And I came up with the idea of deconstructing the star and just literally working with the star imagery until I just exhausted it and fully understood it for myself. So this piece, my work is really, for me, it is the way I work things out. It's the way I understand my dreams, which help me understand my place in the world, which help me be a better person each day, I hope. And so this whole process, what I knew was about me deconstructing something about that star that was me. let's see. I could not get the thing bound. I tried hinges. I tried bookbinder's linen. I tried sewing it with a silver thread that I had sewn with, and the book just kept collapsing. And the hinges looked too, they just didn't look good. So we live out in the country, and so I went outside and stood under the stars that I was doing work about and just sort of let it go. And that same, I think it was the next day, we had a session, the fellows, and I was telling everybody that, you know, I was really having a tough time with the binding. I just couldn't get the dadgum book to bind, and to my satisfaction. And after that meeting, I went home and I thought, I'm just going to use the good old bookbinder's wax linen. And I went to my archives of bookbinder's linen. I've been a bookmaker for a long time. And there I had the exact color. So that's what I did. I bound the book with wax linen, and this is the book. So the book, I decided to do the deconstruction of the stars, and that sort of represents me. And then the other side of the book represents sort of the pie of life sections, or the cycles of my life through the moon. I had to, you know, I think my friend Nancy said, you got to have something to put it in. And I went, oh, okay, I'll build a box. So I made a box. Then I made it a blankie, a book a blankie. And here's the book. And the thing about this book is, it doesn't stand up because it's round, and it won't stand up. And I got very frustrated with that until I realized I don't try to stand up the books that I read. And I got kind of excited about this because about 20 years ago, Steve and I were at the Musée de Cluny in Paris, which has the illuminated manuscripts, and I was so taken by them. I had just started really doing a lot of bookmaking, and I realized that I actually had made myself an illuminated book, and those illuminated books aren't displayed standing up. They're displayed laying down so you can unfold them. So I got over that. But my clasp from Japan is really cool, right? Well, I realized that I had done that for me, so I thought, what else can I do? And Michael had one day said, after seeing my studio, that I was a curator, and I do have a lot of stuff in my studio. And when I found the velvet, I found all these old embroidery hoops. I don't even know what I ever did with them. I don't know why I had them. But I realized if I laid those out, I loved the drape of the velvet. And when you put it in the hoop and it draped, I thought that would be the greatest wall hanging. And what I could do is sew the imagery from each slice of the pie into 8 of those, and then have 2 empty ones so that I could get to be 99, and make it a wall hanging. And then we adopted a puppy. Okay. And the shelter gave us a dog brush to take home. And I brushed her. First night we had her home, brushed her, made the mistake of leaving her with the brush, and she decimated it. And all the tines came out on the floor, and I looked at them and I went, oh, they look like the light and energy that comes out of a star. And I collected them all up, put in a little box, and I decided that my wall hanging was going to be a ceiling hanging. And here it is above you, and this is it looking from afar. So all those that represent the deconstructed stars are tines from Moksha's brush. Okay? I had again to let go of the drape of the fabric, because in order to do this, I had to fold everything over, screw everything together. You know, it became another kind of nightmare project because I kept not thinking ahead enough. This would be a very logical thing to create, and I kept not thinking ahead enough and having to take it apart and go back and do it again. This is what happened to the handmade paper. It became the backs of this. Steve painted all those for me. I inlaid them in. And then, when I was curating my studio, I found this vintage, probably antique, folding yardstick, which had been my father's. And I laid it out to give it more support. And I realized that in laying it out, it formed the constellation, my constellation, which is Taurus. And it also holds this up. And that's representing as a metaphor of my father and my history with my father holding me up. He was so great. Oh, wait. While I was going through everything, I started finding all these old prints I had made or some that other people had made. Lots of old photography, photograms that I had done years and years ago, one of my absolutely favorite mediums to work in. And I started a whole new series with using those and still using the star theme, moving into the Big Bang theme. And these are just two of the many that I've made since then. Excuse me. Yeah, okay. Then I decided I absolutely had to make a book that stood up. So, and I had leftover handmade paper, and I needed a new dream journal. So I actually made a book that would stand up, filled it with the paper. So I felt sort of complete after that. And that day, after finishing that and finishing this ceiling piece, excuse me, I went out in our yard, and the sun was setting, and I just started thinking about completing the fellowship. And instead of getting sad about it, I thought, this is something that my dad used to say, every exit is an entry. And so I'm just looking forward to what's next. I'm incredibly grateful for what's happened. Thank you. Thanks, Kylie. And I see this as a really valuable and meaningful 9 months of my life. And thank you so much for coming, and please pick up a little pie of life for yourself on your way out. Thank you.